The truth occurs.
Hi everyone, it's Sonia here. Well, that SHTF scenario looks like it's here. I got a few updates for you about what's going on with what is now a pandemic, according to the WHO, of course, coronavirus. President Trump has declared a state of emergency to combat the coronavirus. They're giving FEMA up to $50 billion in financial resources to assist Americans affected by the coronavirus outbreak. Trump had also imposed a travel ban on all of Europe, excluding the UK, for most people. But you know what? The situation is changing so fast that from the time that happened to just today, like, things have changed again. Trump extends travel ban to UK and Ireland from Monday. I was kind of wondering, why wouldn't it include the UK? Actually, our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau's wife, Sophie, has COVID-19 and she caught it in the UK. Here's a little more regarding the coronavirus emergency declaration. The move frees up billions of dollars in federal funds and sets the FEMA in motion. The president invoked the Stafford Act, which is a statutory authority for most federal disaster response activities. The Stafford Act gives access to the funds, and the national emergency gives access to authorities, according to a person familiar. Speaking in the White House Rose Garden, Trump said the action would, quote, unleash the full power of the federal government. Not exactly the kind of thing a lot of people want to hear. They do go on to explain what this means, or what it's supposed to mean. Basically, like, FEMA springs into actions, and certain restrictions that would normally be in place for hospitals and medical staff are lifted so that they can act promptly, you know, in an emergency situation. Okay, look, you know what happened in Italy? It got to the point where their medical system was so saturated that doctors are now having to practice what they call disaster medicine, where they have to decide who gets to live and who gets to die. And pretty much, if you're old or you have coexisting conditions, or maybe you're disabled or something like that, they don't have the resources to treat everyone, so they're going to decide that you don't get treated. And at this point, anyone who's over a certain age, their protocol is pretty much to just not treat them. They just have to let them die. And they're saying to the rest of the world, don't let it get to that point. Don't let what happened to us happen to you. Our Premier, Francois Legault, implemented all kinds of measures. For now, it's 2 weeks of school closure. Like, things are closing down. Daycares, schools, universities, all sports events suspended. The parade is suspended. And they're implementing what they're calling social distancing, which actually I saw that in practice last night when I went to the grocery store. There's a line outside, but it's not a line because people are bum rushing the store. It's a line because they're only letting in certain amounts of people at a time so that they're not crowded and there can be a safe distance to try to slow down the spread of the disease. There already actually have been some sort of supply shortages. They're not really, because the supplies are still coming in, but shelves have been emptied. People did rush into the store and panic buy when they realized, like, how serious this is getting. Oh, also, my mother in her nursing home, as of tomorrow, I won't be able to visit her. She won't be able to go out. And so people are kind of panicking and buying up all the beans, and especially the toilet paper, which has been the butt of many jokes. Also, good luck getting any rubbing alcohol, Lysol, hand sanitizer. They're all sold out. Actually, speaking of that, I want to tell you though, here's something that's not sold out. It's the pouches from purifierpouch.com, which I've told you about in other videos. Comes in a bag like this. This is what's inside. It's a little pouch with chlorine dioxide pellets. This is used by professional carpet cleaners and people who clean people's homes, but this is made for home use. You just take it and put it down in the room, and it releases a small amount of chlorine dioxide gas. I know it sounds scary, but look, you know, it's not going to do me any harm. It's a very small amount of gas, but it's enough that it gets into the room and it sanitizes surfaces, and it actually even will get into cloth and pretty much every nook and cranny. So this is what I'm relying on to keep my home sanitized. I'm not spraying Lysol, and I'm not rubbing surfaces with alcohol. If you think about it, you know, they keep telling us wash your hands and you know, use Purell and stuff like that. When you go out, did you ever notice how much you touch stuff? Like, all the time. touch something. What are you going to do? Wash your hands now? Every what? 10 seconds? Carry some water and soap? What are you going to do? You can't wash your hands enough. Like, it's really impossible. Even I tried with Purell. Every time I use something, put some Purell, I realized that it's a losing battle, you know? And then also, you go and buy something. Let's say you buy a bag of rice. You bring it home. Maybe somebody with coronavirus touched the bag of rice. You bring it home. You didn't touch your face the whole way. You washed your hands, but aren't you going to touch that bag of rice at some point once it's in your home? See what I'm saying? And this virus can live on surfaces for days. So this is where this comes in my home anyway. Anything that gets brought in here is going to get exposed to this. And I'm hoping that this is going to kill the viruses, because that's what it was designed to do. It was designed to kill viruses, bacteria, fungus, and mold. It was created to stem outbreaks of MRSA in football teams by sanitizing their locker rooms. And they were using like a different kind of formula, industrial, where you had to mix two things. This is for home use, but again, it does basically the same thing. So I want to let you know, this is what I'm using for my home. And it's still available. It's the Sonia Special. You get 3 of these, and you pay 15% off, and no shipping and handling. So if you're interested, please check out the link. There's lots more info there. Okay, so here's the other thing that I want to talk to you about. Okay, so here's the thing. I'm not trying to freak you out, but I just want to give you some info. And this isn't me making this stuff up. This virus is different. Now, coronaviruses are really common. There's tons of them. They've been around a long time. Some of them infect people. Some of them infect animals. There's something really weird about this one. If you look up coronavirus HIV link, okay, you're going to find some stuff about people with HIV, you know, but you're also going to find coronavirus far more likely than SARS to bond to human cells due to HIV-like mutation. Scientists say, this is from the South China Morning Post. The research team from Nankai University shows new virus has mutated genes similar to those found in HIV and Ebola. Metro UK, coronavirus is like a combination of SARS and AIDS, doctors say. And I'm not telling you this to freak you out. I'm just giving you the info of what is being reported. And what they're saying here is that it's because COVID-19 damages both the lungs and immune system. The best idea now would be to take measures at an early stage of the disease to protect patients' lungs from irreversible fibrosis, which is a disease where tissue becomes damaged and scarred. This is weird. Coronavirus treatment, HIV protease inhibitors. No antiviral treatment for coronavirus infection has been proven to be effective. In a historical control study, the combination of lopinavir and ritonavir among SARS-CoV patients was associated with substantial clinical benefit. To make a long story short, none of the treatment that usually works, like oseltamivir, the things they use for flu, it doesn't work. Antivirals don't work. They're discovering now, though, that some AIDS medications or HIV medications work. So, you know, it looks like maybe that stuff about the genome being different and there being some HIV-like aspects to it could actually be true. I just want to show you that this use of protease inhibitors is now being widely reported. Okay, from The Guardian, hope rises over experimental drugs' effectiveness against coronavirus. A very specific drug for HIV protease. Coronavirus puts drug repurposing on the fast track. Last month, Hangzhou-based Ascletis Pharma applied to the Chinese authorities to test 2 HIV protease inhibitors, ritonavir and ASCO9, in clinical trials to treat COVID. So, you know, it's not AIDS, but apparently it has some kind of similarity with HIV that enables it to hijack the immune system. And it responds to some of the HIV drugs. Coronavirus patient in Spain reportedly recovers after being treated with HIV drugs, from the New York Post. This seems to be the direction it's going in, and in this article you'll see there was also a 32-year-old man from Hackensack who was treated with this kind of drug, and he said he would have been dead and gone He says he's pretty sure he would have been dead if they hadn't used this kind of medication. And just to clarify, these protease inhibitors, these are the new generation of HIV drugs. It's not like the old AZT. They don't do that kind of damage. So, I mean, this is kind of good because it gives us some hope that for people with severe cases, this might be an effective treatment. Okay, me being the kind of nerd that I am, having been sort of fascinated with disease and epidemics since I was a child, kind of like light went off in my head. Because one of the things I was always really interested in was the plague, so I remembered that it's known that there's this like relationship with plague and HIV, as in that some people are resistant to HIV. They were trying to figure out what it was and how it related to the plague. I don't want to explain the whole thing, but there was a connection, as in there were people who had survived the plague, and then like their descendants then seemed to be resistant to HIV. And originally they thought that it was because of the plague that it created a genetic mutation. But down the road, when they looked at genetics from people in Northern Europe from before the plague, they found that they already had this mutation. So later they started thinking it just may be due to just different genetics. And this difference in genetics is called a mutation known as CCR5 delta 32. So the mutation causes the CCR5 co-receptor on the outside of cells to develop smaller than usual and no longer sit outside the cell. So normally people have this CCR5 receptor, but in the people with mutation there's a deletion, from what I understand, and that's called a delta 32. And those people can actually be immune to HIV. I don't know, surprise. They've discovered now that about 10% of the European population is immune to HIV. And the more north you go, the more common the mutation is. They said actually in Denmark, about 25% of people have this. You have to have 2 copies to be immune. But if you have one, you may be sort of resistant. So what I'm thinking is if this has like a HIV-like component, it may affect different populations differently depending on their genetics. Like, I have no idea whether this is true and this is going to pan out, but I think by looking at how it plays out in different countries, we're pretty quickly going to see that. Example, in Italy, actually in Italy they say about 8% of the population has that receptor. They also say, well, they have the oldest population, that's why they had such a high death rate. But if you compare the death rate in Italy to, say, like the death rate in the Scandinavian countries, and you find that there's a big discrepancy, then I would start to wonder if it has something to do with the genetics. You see what I'm saying? You know, one of the reasons why they later thought maybe, no, it's not the plague that caused it, it's the other way around, was the plague originally came through Italy and then spread up north. So they had the most of it down in Italy. So why wouldn't those people have the highest prevalence of this mutation? Because they had more plague than the Nordic countries. And yet the Nordic countries have more of this delta 32 mutation. So as you see, the bottom line is this is not a normal virus. It doesn't respond to normal antivirals. There is some kind of connection with HIV, HIV-like properties to it. It seems to respond to the HIV protease inhibitor drugs. And I'm just wondering whether people with this mutation might turn out to have some resistance to it. I mean, I'm just putting that out there. So yeah, it could be that like Northern Europeans won't be as affected. Oh yeah, and there's one more thing. It's another like kind of like a parallel also to HIV. It's turning out that it may not be that you get coronavirus, you recover, and then you're done, like with the normal flu. It could be that once you get it and recover, it doesn't give you immunity and you can get reinfected. Or it could be that it's what they call a biphasic infection. I'm not going to go super deep into this. I'm just going to show you some of the headlines, and you can look into it. See, there are people who have retested positive for coronavirus after initial recovery. This is where they're saying it is possible the illness could be biphasic, meaning that you get better, but you're not done. You get initial symptoms, then it gets better for a while, but then it comes back. So they're not sure, were they reinfected or is it biphasic? And this is, look, Reuters, New York Times, Science Media Center. This isn't from 4chan, you know? So we don't really know. I mean, it could be that you get it and then you actually just sort of have it, like indefinitely, and it can just keep coming back up periodically. Or it could be that you recover and you seem like you're okay, but maybe you're still infectious. And then the second phase kicks in and it turns out everyone you had contact with in between, maybe they can all get infected, you know? So it may not be so simple as just quarantine yourself for 2 weeks. Plus, in the UK now, it's turning out a lot of people are getting it and they're so mildly affected they don't even know they're sick. I mean, really, personally, I think it's going to be like impossible to contain this. And in conclusion, if you were at all entertaining the idea that this virus could have been actually a biological weapon that was made in a lab and escaped or was somehow introduced intentionally, then you can pretty much scrap the idea that the Chinese were behind it. If this is something that contains something that affects you like HIV, and that there are people in the world who are resistant to that, it wouldn't be the people who are not resistant who would have made it. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that the Scandinavians made this thing, but I'm pretty sure the Chinese wouldn't make something that was super deadly for them and not super deadly for Northern Europeans. Well, anyhow, this is it's not even a theory, it's a hypothesis. But I want to tell you, because I'm going to be keeping an eye out to see whether this is, you know, whether this pans out. Could be that my hypothesis is completely wrong, and then of course I will be scientific and come and say it was wrong. There's no theory, you know. But I'm definitely going to keep an eye on it because I'm curious. And so that's it. Just let me know what you think. Thank you for your support on Patreon. Don't forget to check out the link for the purifier pouches. And I hope you guys all stay safe. I don't think our governments are going too far. I think it's good to preventatively, for now, create this kind of isolation. I know people are super uncomfortable with it. Seriously, like with this kind of thing going around, it's pretty much the only thing you can do. Unless you want to believe that it doesn't exist and everything's fine, I would not take the chance. So I'm actually like pretty much quarantining myself. I'll go out, but avoid places with other people. Just take a walk in the street, whatever. I have my supplies. And I think it's just a responsible thing for us to do, you know, to just try to cut down on contact with the social distancing. I'm on board. I mean, look, it's either that or, you know, we could end up like Italy. I don't think they're faking in Italy. I have some friends in Italy. I could call them up. I'm pretty sure they're not going to tell me, oh no, nothing's happening. It's fine here. You know, there is a bit of this like tendency for people in the last few years to swing all the way the opposite. It used to be like, we'd be like, oh, it's that and worse, and they're not telling us. Now it's like the opposite. Oh, nothing happened. I think it's even more dangerous. Anyhow, that's what I think. Let me know what you think. God bless you guys, and I hope you stay safe. And thanks for listening to me, and I'll see you next time.